morning. And welcome. I am Zia Anderson, a member of the board at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Reston. Whether you are here on Zoom or here in the church sanctuary, we are so glad you are here with us this morning. No matter how old or how young you are, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, however you identify, and whomever you love, know that you are welcome here. I have a few important announcements this morning. Please join the Caring Circle after the service this morning. They will be setting up a table and sharing treats so you can meet with them, and they can share with you who they are, what they do, and how you might be able to help them. The UCR annual meeting will be held in the sanctuary and on Zoom next Sunday, February 25th, 15 minutes after the service ends. The annual meeting includes the election of board members, board officers, leadership council members, and nominating committee members. A meeting notice letter with the election slate was emailed to church members this week. There are copies available in the church foyer. All are encouraged to attend, and we must have a quorum of members to vote. Now, let us center ourselves for worship. Please take some deep, quieting breaths with me. Now, let us enter our time of worship together as we enjoy this morning's prelude.
Good morning and welcome. I am Reverend Aileen Fitzke, and it is my honor to serve this congregation as its minister. All our readings this morning are by historic African-American UUs. Our opening words are by Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. Born a free Black woman in the 19th century, Watkins Harper would go on to become an abolitionist, an advocate for women's suffrage, a writer, a poet. She was a co-founder and vice president of the National Association of Colored Women's Clubs and the director of the American Association of Colored Youth. She was also the superintendent of the colored section of the Philadelphia and Pennsylvania Women's Christian Temperance Unions. She was also a member of the First Unitarian Church in Philadelphia. Songs for the People by Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. Let me make songs for the people, songs for the old and young, songs to stir like a battle cry wherever they are sung. not for the clashing of sabers, nor for the carnage, nor for strife, but songs to thrill the hearts of all with more abundant life. Let me make songs for the weary amid life's fever and fret, till hearts shall relax their tension and careworn hearts forget. Let me sing for the little children before their footsteps stray, sweet anthems of love and duty to float o'er life's highway. I will sing for the poor and aged when shadows dim their sight, of bright and restful mansions where there shall be no night. Our world so worn and weary needs music pure and strong to hush the jangle and discords of sorrow, pain, and wrong. Music to soothe all its sorrow till war and crime shall cease, and the hearts of all grown tender girdle the world with peace.
Good morning. In an article written this week in her newsletter, Fierce Love, the Reverend Dr. Jackie Lewis makes a strong case for why Lift Every Voice and Sing should be more than the Black national anthem. She believes it should be our whole nation's national anthem. The lyrics were written by James Weldon Johnson in 1900 for a celebration of Abraham Lincoln's birthday at a segregated school in Jacksonville, Florida, where Johnson was the principal. At this celebration, a group of 500 children recited the poem together. The lyrics speak of the struggles and aspirations of Black Americans in the late 19th century, but also set out a powerful and positive vision of America as a nation striving toward justice and freedom for all. It is a call for universal action, for Americans to work together towards a common future where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. The poem was later set to music by Johnson's brother, J. Rosamond Johnson, who created a beautiful, powerful melody that is uplifting and singable. The song quickly spread throughout the South and beyond, becoming a prominent hymn for the civil rights movement and a symbol of hope, solidarity, and the ongoing struggle for equality. It has been sung now for over 120 years at civil rights marches, protests, and conventions, way too many to mention. Since 2020, the song has gained even more prominence in the nation's conscience. It was sung by Vanessa Williams during the concert at Capitol Fourth in 2021, commemorating the recognition of Juneteenth as a federal holiday. Even the NFL has begun playing it as part of their pre-game lineup, leading to the very current debate over the place of this hymn in our nation's history. In her newsletter this week, Dr. Lewis advocates that adopting this song as our national anthem could be a step towards acknowledging and embracing the shared history and aspirations of all Americans. Our opening hymn today is hymn number 149, Lift Every Voice and Sing. Please rise in body or spirit and join us.
Ring with harmonies of Good morning. Our chalice lighting this morning is by Egbert Ethelred Brown. Egbert Ethelred Brown was the first African-American man ordained in the Unitarian Church in America in 1912. The faculty discouraged him from attending Meadville Seminary, saying that there were no Unitarian churches yet in existence who would accept a black minister. He went on to found a Unitarian church in Kingston, Jamaica, and in Harlem, New York. His church in Harlem was a hotbed of radicalism and was the seat of many of the intellectual forums of the Harlem Renaissance. Brown anchored his ministry in Unitarianism as he had always intended, but with a humanist rationale, a socialist tilt, and an anti-colonialism stance. Needless to say, this did not endear him to the powers that were at the American Unitarian Association, and they withdrew support of his church, which had they withdrew support of his church. They renewed their support in the 1940s when his church, which had become wildly successful, along with Howard Thurman's Church of the Fellowship of All Peoples, became one of the first intentionally integrated interracial churches in the country. So for our chalice lighting, Without Love by Egbert Ethelred Brown. As we face a troubled and puzzled world, we too are troubled and puzzled. As our fond dreams unrealized and our bright hopes of yesterday wither in the bitter disappointments of today, our courage fails, our spirits droop, our faith trembles, and frustrated, we bow our heads in despair. Nevertheless, we come to God in this hour of worship, in this house of prayer. As we pray for peace in our time, O God, may we ourselves be at peace with the world, with ourselves, and with Thee. May we know that without love, there will never be peace. Teach us, therefore, to love. What does this world need more than love? May we, after hearing the message of the day, leave this place inspired and strengthened, faithfully to fulfill the duties of tomorrow.
Here at UUCR, we have a beloved tradition of singing our covenant together every Sunday. Love is the spirit of this church. We will remain seated while we sing our covenant together. And if you are visiting us today for the first time, we hope that you will accept this song as our blessing to you.
Now is the time for all ages. And if you are feeling young of body and would like to come up closer, you can find a place on the floor here. Today, we have a special guest, a member, Barbara Naif. Welcome. But before she speaks with you, we have a question. So, how long does it take you to get to school? And everyone can think of their answer. Adults, you can think of your children, or think back to when you were in high school and how long it took. So can anyone tell me how long it takes to get to school? Maybe we have someone here who can answer. 15 minutes, okay. Anyone out here? Or if you're on Zoom, you can put something in chat. And Mike, let us know if you see anything. So, yes. Half an hour. Okay, yes. 15 minutes. 45 minutes. An hour. Anything else? 8 minutes. Oh my goodness. So, yes. So, Barbara would like to share a little bit about how things were before.
Thank you. I call this going to school. Until around 1954, this is in your grandparents' student days, or some of y'all's.
And if you want to try using it,
All right.
hold it closer, or you can use it.
Okay. All right. 1954. I was in high school, so I'm saying that this was your grandparents' student days time. And if you were an African American child in Fairfax County, you were not allowed to go to the schools where white children went. Miss Weaver asked you about the length of your ride to school because we want to tell you about a different time when, if black children wanted to go to school past 7th grade, that is, past being 12, they had to ride a bus for hours that took them to a school out west in Manassas, or one to downtown Washington, where they could continue to study as 8th graders. And this was, depending upon where this bus picked them up, they would walk to the bus within the county, and the one bus went all over to pick them up, and some of them would be on for 3 or 4 hours. The rides were so long that some of them said they ate their lunches on the way, and then they hoped that the teachers at lunchtime would provide them something to eat. Black children who were between 6 and 12 often went to their families' churches for class because their parents could not afford the 35 cents per student that it cost to ride the bus. There was also sometimes just no bus available for black students trying to get to what were called the colored schools. Sometimes, if they could manage, parents actually would buy a bus and drive it themselves. And once there, the children all attended school from 6 to 12s in one class. Parents often donated some of their land to build a structure to serve as a one-room school. Children and teachers would bring wood for a fire. If there were books, they were hand-me-down, outdated ones to be shared. Now, in Fairfax County, black families were not allowed to use the public libraries at all. Even these books were very precious. In 1922, I say this must be your great-grandparents' time, maybe, okay? A woman named Louise Archer used her very own funds and parents' help to build a one-room school for black children near here. This is in Vienna. She drove her students to school herself. They planted garden plots so they would have vegetables for lunch. Today, the Louise Archer School is named after that amazing teacher, and it stands on the site of the original colored school. Finally, in 1954, back to your grandparents' time, the first school for 7th to 12th grade black children was built in Fairfax County and named Luther Jackson. Okay, just a little glimpse of what it was like.
Thank you, Barbara. And that sounds really different than your experience today, right? Yes. Well, in the service today and in religious education, we're going to talk more about the often forgotten history in Fairfax County and in the U.S. So we'll now sing the children out, and the words are projected here.
Joy be yours.
is the time in our service when we share our joys and concerns, so that no one ever has to hold them alone. If you are joining us remotely this morning, you may wish to light a real or virtual candle wherever you are to mark what is in your heart as members of the in-person congregation place stones in the water. If those of you at home would like to share what is in your heart today in the congregational chat on the screen, please write to all attendees, and please remember that what you share will be public. Those at home may then read other joys and concerns shared in the chat, and then enter into your own time of prayer and reflection as we all listen to our meditation music this morning. So I invite all those in the congregation who would like to come up and place a stone in the water for your joys and concerns. Let us be one in prayer and meditation. Spirit of life and love that so faithfully animates our creation, we are grateful for this community that is with us in times of both joy and sorrow. We hold in our hearts this morning all those who are facing any hardship or difficulty, those who are grieving or facing illness or disability in themselves or friends or loved ones. In particular, this morning, we hold in our hearts and prayers all those in the global community who have been touched by violence and war. For them, we light this candle. Now let us join together in a moment of silence.
As a self-funded church, UCR relies on the generosity of its members and friends to fund daily operations and to ensure that the church and its resources are here for us and others, now and in the future. Pledges support our worship and music programs, our religious education program, programs for members and friends, community outreach, and connections to Unitarian Universalism. We now invite you to support the work of UU Reston by making your donation to the collection plate if you are here in the sanctuary or at the link on the slide and in the chat box. Thank you for your generosity and support of our beloved spiritual home.
In August 2019, there were commemorations memorializing the 400th anniversary of the first documented occasion of enslaved Africans landing on our shores. The year was 1619, and they landed in Port Comfort in Virginia. It marked the beginning of slavery in British North America. It marked the beginning of the foundation of this nation, of which slavery is deeply embedded, said Asia Leeds, co-director of African Diaspora Studies at Spelman College. So we have the beginnings of not just US governing systems, right? They emerge out of this colonial history, but also the foundation of American wealth. A 70-pound freestanding bell rang for 4 minutes to remember each century of slavery, and organizers invited people across the country to ring bells also. Along with the physical commemoration in Fort Comfort, Virginia, the New York Times supplement, The 1619 Project, came out. The 1619 Project was the brainchild of journalist Nicole Hannah-Jones, who, in order to mark that date in 1619 in a different way, invited writers, poets, journalists, photographers, and scholars to write essays on different events or aspects of Black history through time in what would become that New York Times supplement, The 1619 Project. Her opening essay won the Pulitzer Prize that year. That same year, curricular materials came out for use in schools across the country. In 2022, the 1619 Project, A New Origin Story, came out, a book-length project that expanded on that New York Times supplement. In it, Nicole Hannah-Jones includes more essays by more writers, poets, scholars, and journalists, and includes additional commentary on the essays and stories included. And this past month on the Hulu streaming service, the 1619 Project began as a multi-part limited documentary series. In the preface to the book, Hannah-Jones writes why she wrote the supplement and then the longer book. When in high school, she writes, Black people were largely absent from the histories I read. The vision of the past that I absorbed from school textbooks, television, and the local history museum depicted a world, perhaps a wishful one, where Black people did not really exist. This history rendered Black people on all the earth inconsequential at best, invisible at worst. We appeared only when unavoidable. Slavery was mentioned briefly in the chapter on this nation's most deadly war. And then Black people disappeared again for a full century, until magically reappearing as Martin Luther King Jr. gave a speech about a dream. The quantum leap served to wrap the Black experience up in a few paragraphs and a tidy bow, never really explaining why, 100 years after the abolition of slavery, King had to lead the March on Washington in the first place. It was only because of her one Black social studies teacher in high school who fed her curiosity with books outside the regular curricular materials that she learned that so many books existed about Black people and by Black people, that Black people had so much history that could be learned. Think back on your experience of history in high school. What did you learn about Black history, if anything? I know I only learned about slavery as it existed in the context of the Civil War. I didn't learn about the Civil Rights Movement. I didn't learn about Ella Baker or Ida B. Wells. I didn't know who James Baldwin was, or W.E.B. Du Bois, or Bayard Rustin. I knew nothing about the Harlem Renaissance, even though it was a very significant part of this country's history, in which music, art, prose, and poetry were created that shaped that history. I learned about all these things as an adult, searching out histories that I was never taught. What is worse than not learning about Black history is learning about that history inaccurately in order to whitewash a destructive and disturbing past. As late as the 1970s, we find inaccuracies like this in textbooks in Alabama. With all the drawbacks of slavery, it should be noted that slavery was the earliest form of Social Security in the United States. Or this one found in Virginia that the state provided. Slavery provided a better life for the Negroes than did Africa. In his new home, the Negro was far away from the spears and war clubs of enemy tribes. He had some of the comforts of a civilized life. That was a 1970s Virginia textbook. As recently as 2015, in a textbook published by the educational publisher McGraw-Hill, there was a statement in a section called Patterns of Immigration that stated that the American slave trade brought millions of workers from Africa to the southern United States to work on agricultural plantations. It collapsed the entire history of slavery, the reason for an entire demographic in the United States, into a pattern of migration. It took a 15-year-old high school student to object to the use of workers as opposed to enslaved humans for the publisher to admit their error, an error that no teacher or editor at McGraw-Hill had picked up on. This is why the 1619 Project is so important. It fleshes out a history that has largely been rendered peripheral or invisible. The original magazine supplement was made up of several essays, including the introductory one for which Nicole Hannah-Jones won the Pulitzer, and which provides a framework for the rest of the essays. It covered such issues as the commodification and exploitation of human beings as currency and the assets to fuel the rise of capitalism. The legacy of slavery and current healthcare, and the legacy of slavery and our current healthcare systems. Traffic patterns in Atlanta. The contribution of Black musicians to what would become quintessential American music. The irony of the 1619 Project is that it has caused quite an uproar from the time it was published to the present. There was, of course, legitimate historical questions, and the book that came out in 2022 expands the project and was pulled together to provide additional source material to respond to those questions. But there were other reactions. Texas and Florida have banned the teaching of the 1619 Project in their public schools. Several other states have legislation pending to do the same. What is dangerous about the 1619 Project is that it tells a fuller history of the United States. It pushes against the narrative of American exceptionalism that is promoted when we do not acknowledge that American history is fraught with ambiguity, violence, and cruelty. And it brings to light the contributions, creativity, and innovations that are also the legacy of the struggles for freedom for and by Black Americans that brings their contributions to the center of our history, rather than the periphery, where some would prefer they stayed. This morning in our Time for All Ages, we learned about, Barbara was telling me about the Fairfax County African American History Inventory, a new inventory of the Black history of Fairfax County. Linda and Barbara talked about some of the inequality in the Fairfax County schools well into the 20th century. The schools were not fully integrated until the 1970s. Virginia was one of the slowest to integrate their high schools, their public schools. I dipped into the African American History Inventory also this week and spent hours going down many a rabbit hole. But the one document that struck me was this scanned old yellow document that covers the work and accomplishments of what was called the Colored Citizens Association of Fairfax County. Their purpose was to organize the Black people of Fairfax County for the purpose of voting in all elections. And their aims included fuller use of the ballot by more Black people, greater improvement in Black schools, justice in the courts and other conveyances, active participation in all county and civic affairs, and promotion of a better feeling between the races. In the course of the years 1928 through 1941, they succeeded in many of their aims. They improved the salaries of Black teachers, though not yet to be equal with those of white teachers. They petitioned for and achieved the participation of Black people on juries in Fairfax County. They achieved the removal of whites-only signs from local gas stations. They petitioned for improved physical conditions in the Black schools, including for toilets that conform to state laws. They paid for the transportation for Black students to be able to go to high school in Manassas. The list goes on and on. In some things, they were successful. In others, they were not. There would not be a high school for Black students in Fairfax County until the 1950s. And just an interesting digression, Virginia's progress in integrating schools after Brown versus Board of Education was glacial. The governor closed any public school system that attempted integration in a program called Massive Resistance. The public schools in Prince William County were closed for 4 years between 1959 and 1964. Some, but not certainly the majority of white students, could enroll in all-white private academies. And I think because one of the high schools in Prince William County was one of the plaintiffs in Brown versus Board of Education, this closing of the schools was retaliation. Who here has ever heard of the work of the Colored Citizens Association of Fairfax County? Anyone? Yay, good for you, Carolyn. Writes Eboo Patel in his book Sacred Ground, Pluralism, Prejudice, and the Promise of America. People who knew the whip of the slave master in Alabama, the business end of a police baton on the south side of Chicago, people who could easily have called our nation a lie, chose instead to believe America was a broken promise and gave their bodies and their blood to fix it. And if we do not know our history in all of its fullness, we cannot understand our present, how it came to be, and why. As William Faulkner wrote, the past is never dead. It's not even past. The people who object to the 1619 Project not only do not want to know about this particular past, they do not want anyone else to learn about it either. But it is important to know because we also cannot shape a more just future if we do not understand our unjust past. The Black Buddhist teacher Larry Ward, a student of Thich Nhat Hanh, writes in his book America's Racial Karma, it is a spiritual work to acknowledge, recognize, and come to terms with our racial past. The spiritual and social work of healing America's racial karma requires a new conscious intent of living together in individual and collective safety, wellness, justice, and profound meaning. And we do this by acknowledging the truth of the suffering behind the constrictions of the law. It is the justice of precious Black bodies being respected and loved concretely as divinely human. Mercy means to surrender cloaking ourselves from ourselves and experiencing a shared vulnerability that we have never likely felt before. It invites surrendering the fateful silence of centuries, robbing us of our humanity. So that's the purpose of the 1619 Project. It is our opportunity to surrender the fateful silence of centuries, which robs Black people of their humanity and centers them within the historical narrative, changing it forever. There was this notion in post-Reconstruction and into the earliest 20th century that there was this Negro problem that had to be solved. At the end of her essay in the 1619 Project, Nicole Hannah-Jones turns that around. She asks this question: what if America understood itself finally in this 400th year that Black Americans have never been the problem, they have been the solution? We were told once by virtue of our bondage that we would never be American, but it was by our bondage that we became the most American of all, by pushing the country to live up to its highest ideals. That is why we study Black history, so that we understand our past more fully, so that we can create a future where we can, to quote Larry Ward, ride the winds of change unafraid. Amen, and blessed be.
Our closing hymn is number 121, We'll Build a Land. So please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing.
Where the oil of gladness is
Our benediction this morning is by Louis H. Latimer. Louis H. Latimer was the son of formerly enslaved people. He was an inventor, patent expert, draftsperson, engineer, author, poet, musician. Latimer worked with Alexander Graham Bell to create the drawing that helped secure the patent for the first telephone. He worked for the Edison Electric Light Company, and his innovations in design of carbon filaments, which were used in incandescent light bulbs, significantly improved the bulb's efficiency and made it more practical for everyday use. His contributions to the lighting industry helped make electrical lighting more accessible and affordable. He was the founding member of the First Unitarian Church in Flushing, New York. Love is All by Louis H. Latimer. What is there in this world besides our loves to keep us here? Ambition's course is paved with hopes deferred. With doubt and fear, wealth brings no joy, and brazen-throated flame leaves us at last, naught but an empty name. O soul, receive the truth, ere heaven send it thy recall. Naught here deserves our thoughts but love, for love is all.
We now extinguish this flame. But not the light of hope and truth, the warmth of community, nor the fire of commitment. These we carry forth in our hearts until we are together again.